Pan Am Flight 914 vanished in 1955 and shocked everyone. Years later, the plane landed in 1992, and the people on board had not aged at all. The pilot spoke as if it was still 1955, leaving the control tower frozen in fear. Before anyone could reach them, the plane took off again and disappeared once more. Let us follow this strange story, because today the truth comes out. Let's go back in time for a moment and imagine this scene. It's July 2nd, 1955. The sun is shining bright in the sky. People are wearing poodle skirts and slicking back their hair, and rock and roll music is just starting to become popular, making many parents shake their heads. At a busy airport in New York, Pan Am Flight 914, a big Douglas DC-4 airplane, is getting ready to take off on a short, regular flight down to sunny Miami, Florida. There are 57 passengers on board, probably thinking about the beaches and the warm weather waiting for them, along with 4 crew members. The sky is clear, the airplane has been fueled, and everything looks perfect for a safe and normal trip. But here's where things start to take a strange and shocking turn. Just a few moments after the airplane takes off and lifts into the air, something incredible happens. It disappears. 1 second, it's on the radar, heading toward the Florida coast as expected, and the next second, nothing. It's completely gone. The people in the air traffic control room start to panic as they check their equipment, wondering if there's a problem with the radar. Pilots flying nearby are asked to keep a lookout, but no one can see Pan Am Flight 914. It's as if the airplane has decided to play a scary game of hide-and-seek with the entire world. Now, back in 1955, people did not have all the advanced satellite systems and tracking tools we have today. But even then, a huge airplane weighing about 90,000 pounds does not just vanish without a trace. Officials quickly jump into action, sending out search teams to look through every bit of land and sea between New York and Miami. They search for anything: pieces of wreckage, an oil slick on the water, a floating suitcase, or even a life jacket. They want some clue to explain what happened to the airplane and the 61 people on board. Days go by, turning into weeks. Weeks go by, turning into months. And what do they find? Absolutely nothing. No broken pieces of the airplane, no luggage, no life jackets, not even a sandwich floating in the water. It is as if the airplane, its passengers, and its crew were pulled right out of the sky by some giant, invisible hand. Eventually, after a lot of searching and with heavy hearts, the officials have to give up. They decide the airplane must have crashed into the ocean, and they mark it as lost with everyone on board. It's a sad and strange ending, but sometimes, officials say, these things happen. The families receive the heartbreaking news. They are given some money as compensation, though no amount can replace a loved one. And the world moves on, as it always does. 61 people are simply gone from history. Case closed. Or so everyone thought. Now, let's fast forward many years into the future. Elvis Presley has come and gone, the Cold War is starting to calm down, and the internet has appeared, giving curious people a whole new way to share strange stories. The year is 1992. 37 long years have passed since Flight 914 disappeared. The families of the lost passengers have mourned, moved on with their lives, and maybe even told their grandchildren the strange story of the airplane that never came home. Then, something absolutely shocking happens. On a warm day in May, 1992, at the airport in Caracas, Venezuela, which, by the way, is about over 1,100 miles away from where Flight 914 was supposed to land, a man named Juan de la Corte is working as an air traffic controller. He's probably sitting at his desk, maybe drinking some coffee and thinking about the hot weather, when suddenly something very strange shows up on his radar. There's an airplane flying nearby, but it's not just any airplane. This one looks old, really old, like something you'd see in an old black-and-white movie. It's a Douglas DC-4, the same kind of airplane that disappeared back in 1955. Juan, staying calm and professional, sends a radio message to the mystery airplane. What comes back over the radio shocks everyone in the control tower. A confused voice crackles through the speakers, asking, "Where are we?" And then comes the truly unbelievable part. "We are Pan American Airways Flight 914, from New York to Miami, with a crew of 457 passengers." Imagine the faces of the people in the control tower as they hear this. For a moment, time must have felt like it stopped. How could an airplane from 1955, which everyone believed had crashed and disappeared forever, suddenly reappear in 1992, thousands of kilometers off course? What happened during those 37 missing years? Where had the airplane gone? And why was it back now, looking just like it had on the day it left? This strange and incredible story leaves people with so many questions and very few answers. It's one of those tales that make you wonder just how many mysteries the world still holds, and how sometimes, even after many years, the past can come flying back when you least expect it. Juan, the air traffic controller in Caracas, Venezuela, probably had to work hard to keep his jaw from dropping onto his desk when he heard the pilot's voice. He calmly told the pilot that, well, they were definitely a little off course, and, by the way, welcome to Caracas. Juan cleared the airplane for landing, thinking this must be some kind of strange joke, or maybe a very confused group of people flying an old airplane in some vintage plane event. But just when Juan thought things couldn't get any stranger, the pilot said something that truly blew his mind. As the old DC-4 airplane lined up to land on the runway, the pilot, sounding cool and calm, announced over the radio, "We are scheduled to land in Miami at 9:55 a.m. on July 2nd, 1955. Hold on. Juan quickly did the math in his head. Did that pilot just say 1955? Juan told the pilot that, no, it was actually May 21st, 1992. There was a long, heavy silence on the radio, and it was probably the loudest silence Juan had ever heard. Then, everything fell apart into chaos. Juan could hear shouting and screaming coming from the cockpit, and most likely from the cabin as well. The pilot was panicking, which is honestly pretty easy to understand. Imagine finding out that you had somehow skipped almost 40 years and ended up in the wrong country, far away from where you were supposed to land. Thinking quickly, Juan ordered the airport's ground security crews to go out to the plane, probably hoping they could help the poor, confused, and maybe even time-traveling people on board. But just as the ground crew got close to the airplane, the pilot suddenly shouted over the radio, "No! Do not get near! We're leaving now!" And just like that, with a loud roar from its old engines, Pan Am Flight 914 sped down the runway and took off once again, disappearing back into the sky just as mysteriously as it had arrived. The Venezuelan authorities, now completely shocked and confused, scrambled jets to try to follow it. But of course, the DC-4 was gone. Vanished. Again. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Because it didn't end there. A few hours later, the same Pan Am Flight 914 supposedly appeared again. This time landing at the place where it had been trying to go all along, Miami International Airport. The airport staff in Miami were, to put it lightly, completely shocked. Here was an old airplane, looking like it belonged in a museum, claiming to be a flight that had disappeared 37 years earlier. The staff checked their records, the pilot's story, the airplane's registration number, and all the details matched perfectly. It really was Pan Am Flight 914. After long and probably very intense questioning, where the officials likely asked every possible question from, "Are you all right?" to, "Where in the world have you been?" the crew and passengers were eventually allowed to leave and reunite with their families. And here's the part that truly makes this story unforgettable. The part that makes people's heads spin. When the passengers and crew walked out to meet their families, the families were in for the shock of their lives. While the families had aged 37 years, growing older with wrinkles, gray hair, and all the changes that come with time, the passengers and crew of Flight 914 looked exactly the same as they did on that summer morning in 1955. They hadn't aged a single day. Cue the dramatic music, because this became one of the most puzzling unsolved mysteries ever told. Did these people really travel through time? Did they somehow fall into a wormhole, a hidden crack in the fabric of the universe, only to reappear decades later without any sign of aging? Theories and guesses came flying in from all directions. Some people immediately pointed to the famous and spooky Bermuda Triangle, shouting, "It must be the triangle," even though the flight path wasn't anywhere near that area. But, as people often do, they ignored the facts because the triangle was such a popular idea to blame. Others, their eyes wide with excitement and their heads probably filled with science fiction stories, suggested aliens. Maybe little green men had taken the airplane and its passengers, shown them around space, and then kindly dropped them back on Earth. Just 37 years late. The most popular and exciting theory, the one that really caught people's imagination, was the idea of a time portal, or wormhole. According to this idea, Pan Am Flight 914 didn't crash at all. It slipped through some hidden door in the universe, spent several decades in a place where time didn't pass, and then came back out, first showing up in Venezuela by accident, and then finally arriving in Miami, where it was always meant to land. This story had everything you could want in a mystery: drama, the wonder of time travel, and people who had somehow escaped the effects of time. It became a favorite in books and shows about unsolved mysteries, passed around like a spooky legend that made people wonder if there's much more to our world than we can understand. Historians scratched their heads, skeptics rolled their eyes, and believers believed with all their hearts. After all, the details were so clear, so specific, and so strange that many people couldn't help but believe that maybe, just maybe, Pan Am Flight 914 had really found a way to slip through time. So, here comes the big question that everyone wants to ask. Is Pan Am Flight 914 the final perfect proof that time travel is real? Did those 61 people really find a way to beat time and skip almost 40 years without aging a single day? Well, this is where the record scratches, and all the party balloons start to deflate, with a sad and slow hiss. The amazing, mind-blowing mystery of Pan Am Flight 914 turns out to be a big, beautiful, and completely made-up story. Yes, a giant pile of nonsense. That's right, you heard that correctly. The whole wild tale, from the airplane's sudden disappearance in 1955 to the shocking return of its passengers in 1992 without even one extra wrinkle, was not real. It was actually invented and written by a well-known American tabloid called the Weekly World News. If you have never heard of this newspaper, imagine the craziest, wildest headlines you can think of. Make them 10 times crazier. And then you will have some idea of what this publication was like. These were the people who regularly printed stories about Elvis still being alive, strange creatures like Batboy hiding in caves, and aliens visiting the White House. They were not famous for telling the truth or doing careful research. They were famous for selling papers with stories that were so strange and wild that you just had to pick one up to see what they were saying. The Weekly World News did not just publish the Pan Am Flight 914 story one time either. Oh no, the story was too good to let go after just one telling. They ran the story multiple times during the 1980s and 1990s, and each time they told it, they added or changed some details, because being consistent was clearly not very important to them when they were making up stories about time-traveling airplanes. For example, in some earlier versions of the story, the plane was said to have reappeared after 30 years, not 37. That might sound like a small detail, but it shows how they were not worried about the facts matching up. And the air traffic controller in Caracas, the heroic Juan de la Corte? Well, the newspaper could not even keep his picture the same. In some versions of the story, they showed one man's face, and in other versions they showed someone who looked completely different, sometimes with a mustache, sometimes clean-shaven, almost like they were playing a silly game called Guess Who's the Fake Hero. These kinds of mistakes were pretty obvious if anyone took the time to look closely. But the truth is, who really wants to look closely when the story is this fun and exciting? The legend of Pan Am Flight 914 got an even bigger boost in modern times thanks to the Internet, especially YouTube. A popular YouTube channel called Brightside, which is known for its smooth, easy-to-watch videos on lots of different topics, made a video about the story of the missing plane. That video gathered millions of views. Some reports say over 15 million. And it told the story with all the drama and excitement people love, convincing a whole new generation that this incredible event had actually happened. Now, to be fair, Brightside apparently did admit near the end of the video that the story was just a hoax, a piece of fiction created by a tabloid. But here's the thing about watching videos on the Internet. People often have very short attention spans. Many viewers were probably so caught up in the thrilling story that they clicked away before they got to the part where the video explained it was all made up. Their minds were already blown by the idea of a plane lost in time, so they left believing it was true. And because of that, the legend spread even more, reaching people all over the world. So, the honest truth is this: there was no Pan Am Flight 914 that flew through time. There were no passengers who came back unchanged after 37 years. And there was no confused pilot talking to a Venezuelan air traffic controller in 1992 about a flight that took off in 1955. There are no official flight records, no serious newspaper reports, and no real evidence to support any part of this story. Pan Am was a real airline. And yes, planes sometimes did go missing over the years, but this particular story is just that, a story. But here's where things get even more interesting. Why do stories like this stick in people's minds? Why do some people keep believing in them, even after they have been proven false? You will still find people today who argue that the Weekly World News actually stumbled upon a real event, and that the mistakes in the story are just part of a giant government cover-up. These believers claim that powerful people are desperate to hide the truth about time travel, or wormholes, or whatever really happened to Flight 914. They say the tabloid story was either a clumsy way to leak the truth, or maybe even part of a plan to make the real story sound silly, so no one would believe it. This is a classic way that many conspiracy theories work. The less evidence there is, the more some people take that as proof of a cover-up. The stranger the claim, the more some people believe that they, the secret powers behind the scenes, are trying to hide it. And honestly, for all the silliness of the Weekly World News, they tapped into something deep and timeless. They were not just selling newspapers, they were selling possibilities, no matter how impossible they were. This story about Flight 914 became one of their greatest hits, a tale so perfectly designed to make people wonder that it has lived on long after the newspaper itself disappeared. Is the mystery of Pan Am Flight 914 finally solved? Yes. If you mean it was revealed as a made-up story, then it was solved the very moment the newspaper first printed it. But if you are asking whether the legend will ever completely fade away, the answer is probably no. It's just too strange, too fun, and too fascinating to ever fully disappear. What do you think? Was there a tiny piece of truth somewhere in the story? Or was it all just a brilliant piece of wild imagination from a tabloid that specialized in the unbelievable? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like and subscribe for more.